patch notes 10.4 rundown. I'm completely aware that 10.3 was never uploaded, and, well, it's not going to be uploaded. So we're just going to go straight into 10.4. Looks like there's a lot of buffs here in 10.4. Lots and lots of champions. I know a bit about what they're doing with some of the champions. On the nerfs, Aurelion Sol, Aphelios, Singe, Sona, and Soraka. And so this is obviously a very sad time if you are a League of Legends fan, a fan of healing. Okay, so let's just take a look. Also, looks like we have some Blood Moon skins. So Tryndamere, Katarina, and Master Yi. The only viable ones in here, obviously for competitive, is probably going to be Katarina and Tryndamere. And then obviously you have the funnel Master Yi strategies, which you can get a Master Yi skin. I'm actually so surprised. I would think that Master Yi wouldn't sell a lot of skins, but maybe he's actually very popular at low MMR. I'm not really sure. Anyways, champions. Q dash speed increased, R cooldown decreased, and now stops dashes. Ooh, these buffs put the Immolate. These buffs plus the Immolate changes. Spoiler alert. In 10.4 should help Amumu as he tries to play with the big boys. Q bandage toss, 1350 after hitting an enemy to 1800 after hitting an enemy. That is really big. R curse of the sad mummy, 150 to 110 second scaling to 130 to 100 second scaling. This is really big on his R because he typically only ends up getting one CDR item super early, I believe, depending on how you end up building him. Now, they're mentioning the Immolate changes, so I guess what they're going to end up trying to shove is Tank Amumu inside of the jungle, because obviously he's not getting any damage nerfs or things of that nature. So Cinder Hulk Amumu probably will end up being the way to go if the changes to Cinder Hulk are as impactful as they potentially, or as they were slated to be. So Stop in the Name of Love now stops enemies in the middle of their dashes. This is obviously really big as well. So these seem like quality of life, but I think that they're actually so big because this also means that Amumu can start dealing his damage faster. And so his DPS ends up coming out, and he'll probably have higher total damage as well if he's trying to chase an enemy and eventually dog them down. So I think these are really nice little changes. I think Amumu was on the cusp of being competitively viable, and especially in a meta where jungle is so restricted in access, and junglers that can actually scale or have value in the later stages of the game are definitely lacking, especially in the magic damage role, outside of obviously very select ones like Karthus, Talia, Ornn, I'm not going to say Elise, and, you know, things of that nature. Sejuani, I guess if you want to go that route. And yeah, Aphelios. Players can now see both of Aphelios' guns. Caliber no longer resets basic attack timer after consuming a mark. Crescendum sentries die faster. R range decreased. Okay. Passive Weapon of the Faithful. Players can now see both guns Aphelios is holding next to his health bar. That's really nice. Calibrum, the sniper rifle. Aphelios no longer resets his attack timer right after consuming a mark. His attack timer still resets for the mark attack. Crescendum, the chakram. Red versus blue. Aphelios' sentries range indicators are now red for enemies when it's inactive. Base number of sentry attacks, 4 to 3. Number of attacks still scale with attack speed. Sentry health against range. Ranged basic attacks deal 2 damage to 3 damage. Sentries have 6 health. Sentry health against AoE. AoE attacks 2 damage to 4 damage. Sentries have 6 health. Aphelios' sentries no longer occasionally die upon being activated. These aren't changes that hurt Aphelios at all, and so he's still going to remain S tier. And this is obviously really good. This is attack consuming a I mean, this is all completely fine. Aphelios is still going to be absolutely insane, so that's fine. Moonlight Vigil, 1600 range to 1300 range. I think this is probably, it's going to end up being noticeable, but you're not playing Aphelios all the time with intentions to shoot someone from, you know, an entire screen away. Obviously, there have been some instances where Aphelios can open with Moonlight Vigil to initiate some fights, depending on who his teammates actually are as well. And so I think this is... I mean, I like that they're not just destroying him. You really want to just give it time in order to sell skins and also have people charge RP in order to acquire him if they're lacking the blue essence. And so I really like that. But I just like really, really strong champions. And so I'm a really big fan of Aphelios. Aurelion Sol, W active star damage. Wait, what? I thought he was nerfed. Huh? Well, that's a typo. W Celestial Expansion. Active increase star damage. Total damage increase. Total damage by 50 to 40%. This isn't the end of the world. Obviously, Aurelion Sol isn't being seen in competitive, but there's Aurelion Sol 1-tricks, I believe, on every server that are pretty highly rated. And there's a guy, I think his name is Diablo, on EU West that a lot of pro players have asked me what I thought and if I would take time to watch him play Aurelion Sol in mostly mid and top lane. And so when I watch the Aurelion Sol in top and in mid, when it's piloted by a 1-trick that really seems to know what they're doing, Aurelion Sol actually looks really fine. And it does not seem like the issues actually lay with the champion, even though I think that old pre-rework or pre-slight rework Aurelion Sol was actually a lot better than current Aurelion Sol. And that all that old Aurelion Sol needed was a little bit of damage. Or maybe he just needed to find the item Leandri sooner. Who knows? Caitlyn, bonus attack speed at level 1 increase. Sharpening, can you sharpen your guns? Caitlyn's early game harass potential since she's sitting in a pretty weak spot at the minute. Bonus attack speed, 10% at level 1 to 20. That is really big for Caitlyn because I already think that Caitlyn is completely competitively viable. And with all the changes that are happening down there in the bottom lane, this is really, really good for her. Because AD carries are, well, they were the Holy Trinity for a while, but now Ezreal has rejoined the fray. Callista is starting to make appearances again, and obviously Xayah has swung her head into the mix. And so Caitlyn getting more viability is also really nice. Garen, Q-empowered basic attack damage ratio increased W resistances after max from enemy kills. W shield increased. Decisive Strike, empowered basic attack damage ratio, 0.4 attack damage to 0.5 attack damage. That's really big because Garen doesn't tend to build pure tank. He tends to build more on the physical damage side. So W Courage, blood of my enemies at max resistances from enemy kills. Garen increases his bonus armor and magic resistance by 10. Wow, that's actually really big. What? By 10. Increases his bonus armor and magic resistance by... So he probably ends up getting like 1,000 gold worth of stats in most cases by like mid to late game. Shield 0.1% max health to 70 to 170 plus 0.2 bonus health. I don't know. I'm assuming that this is better. I'm assuming this is better. But obviously, I don't know that. Yeah, just go to Freak Stream. I don't have anything pulled right open. Our goal is to bring back diversity for Garen, specifically buffing his tankier builds while keeping his damage-oriented build still viable, to the point that there's a change missing in the section that's included in the jungle section instead, so look below for that, okay? Gnar, base MS increase, passive mini Gnar, MS decreased, R damage ratio increase. Movement speed is up by 10. Passive Rage Gene, bonus movement speed 10 to 30, to 0 to 20, levels 1 to 18 in mini Gnar form. Okay, R Gnar, 0.2 attack damage to 0, and 0.5 ability power to 0.5 attack damage and 1.0 ability power. I wonder if this means that they're trying to push Guinsu's. I guess they're trying to push Guinsu's as a potential item on attack speed and split push Gnar. I'm assuming that is what's going on there. Jace, base mana and mana growth increased, Q damage increased, so they're trying to bring back Jace. Jace should now be able to cast more abilities to fend off of his opponent's mana. Is up by 18, but mana growth is also up by 8 per level, and so, yeah, he's going to get 1 or 2 extra spell casts pretty consistently per lane phase that he ends up occurring in, which is actually quite big for Jace, so that converts to quite a lot of damage, especially because Jace tends to be quite starved in the mana pool department. Q to the skies, base damage 45 to 220 to 55 to 255. Did they just revert Jace's old nerfs? So they're trying to bring Jace back. The problem is right now is that a lot of the top lane champions actually fare pretty good against Jace. And so I imagine that Jace might pick up some traction in the LPL whenever it returns, as well as the LCK. But in NA and LEC, it's already really hard to find people that can actually reliably play Jace. And then you would also want to put Jace inside of certain team compositions, because I think that the way that the meta is slated right now doesn't really favor Jace all that much unless you're really trying to pair him with a very hard early game, mid game acceleration team composition. And then he also needs to find his spots. I think that even having these kinds of buffs, it doesn't make him blind pickable, but I think that people are going to do it anyway, very akin to Set. And so in that regard, it's interesting. And I obviously love the buff. Lux, Q damage, increased cooldown, decreased early. Lux can now flash while casting R. Q light binding. Base damage 70 to 250 to 80 to 260, so up by 10. Damage ratio, the ability power is down. The cooldown is down by 2 early on, which is actually quite big. R Final Spark. Flash Dance Lux can now flash while casting Final Spark. That's really big on roams, both for mid lane Lux and for support Lux. These are buffs that obviously benefits support Lux more than mid lane Lux, but obviously our Final Spark being able to flash to reposition on roams if an opponent tries to flash out of the way is definitely very good. It's going to help you pick up some kills in some areas, and then having the Q cooldown up more often just helps set up kills and helps set up poke. Anything that buffs mage supports are obviously really good. Ramus, base attack speed and attack speed ratio increased. Okay, base attack speed 0.625 to 0.656. Attack speed ratio 0.625 to 0.656. Okay. Singed, base health and armor what? Singed was pumped up on his plant-based potion before it was cool. While his healthy elevations have been letting him conquer the top lane, we're going to make his triumphs a bit more risky. But what are they talking about? What? What? I've seen one singed. I've seen one singed in maybe the last like 1,000 games that I've played, and then the only singed I've seen in competitive was Whippo, and he picked it against Set, which is one of Set's worst matchups. Wow, that makes no sense. This makes no sense. So Riot has their formula, or their would you call it a syllabus, where they have an evaluation for how they decide to nerf champions. I would really like to see the data behind this Singe nerf. I really, really would love to see the data behind the Singe nerf, because I just can't wrap my head around it. Maybe I'm using the wrong word there, but this is so bizarre. Sona. Auras now grant Sona mana at first ally tag. Q, W, and E costs increase. Hymn of Valor. Sona now gains 30 mana for the first time she tags an ally with her aura. Costs 50 to 70 mana to 75 to 95 mana. This is a very interesting way of keeping... This is buffing support Sona, but ends up nerfing solo lane Sona. That's really cool. W, Aria of Perseverance. Sona now gains 30 mana the first time. Okay. Oh, these are really cool, innovative buffs. This is actually really nice. Sona now gains 30 mana the first time she tags an ally with her aura. Costs 65 to 90 mana. This is... I'm going to have to give Riot a big old congratulations on this one. They actually came up with a pretty innovative way to buff support Sona while hurting the top and mid Sona. Okay. All right. I'm feeling a little bit optimistic as I go down the rest of these notes. Soraka, base stats adjusted, Q self-heal, rejuvenation, heal duration, and bonus movement speed decrease. Q cost increase, W health cost decrease with when rejuvenated. Heal increase later. Health is up by 15. Health growth is down by 4, and so she ends up losing about 130 gold worth of HP or something. Mana is up by a little bit. Mana growth is down by quite a lot, though. So she's losing a lot of mana inside of her laning phase. Attack damage is rounded out, but they went down with it instead of up, so they didn't move it to like 51 or something. Q Starfall, self-heal, 60 to 140 plus 0.5 ability power to 40 to 80 plus 0.3 ability power. Wow. Okay. Rejuvenation, heal duration, 5 seconds to 2.5 seconds. So you get a lot more of the health faster. The thing about this, though, is that when she's afflicted by Morello, this ends up hurting her more, right? Because when she's afflicted by Morello, the Morello dissipates while some of the heal is still coming through. Or maybe I'm misunderstanding how this ends up working. But this is also a nerf in that way. When she's affected by grievous wounds, this also hurts her more, unless it's Kled, I believe. So cost 40 to 60 to 60 to 80 mana. Bonus movement speed 15 to 35% to 10 to... Wow. Me after a massage and ice cream. While Soraka is rejuvenated, the 10% maximum cost for casting Astral Infusion will be reduced by 40, 55, 70, 85, 100%. Heal 80 to 200 to 80 to 220. So, the reasons that you would pick Soraka in competitive and support are still present. This completely destroys her ability to be a solo laner, though. This is so over the top. This is so over the top, and it makes me so sad. This actually makes me really, really sad. Because rather than trying to, like, slightly dial her back and then seeing if people still come up with answers to her, because there are champions that apparently destroy Soraka in top lane. And mid lane, she was extremely less common than she was up in top lane. She's still going to be good support in the spots where you would want to pick Soraka in support in order to just have lots of healing against the enemy team composition. But now this is going to require you to think more about those spots and against those team compositions. So she's still going to be really, really good in solo queue. At the support position, she's still going to be God, especially at all the low MMRs. And then even at higher MMRs, she's still going to be really oppressive, especially because adding the base damage to 220 and you get all the amplified things for your heal, nothing is affected by the heal ratio here. So she actually just, this isn't just a 20 heal buff. This is actually much larger than a 20 heal buff. So she's actually healing more than before, except for herself, and she just doesn't deal as much damage. And no one cared about Soraka dealing damage. And so in free lanes where Soraka can't kill the opponent anyway and she can't damage them, you could still actually probably take her solo lane. All things considered, you could absolutely still take her solo lane, and you could probably just put 3 points in Star Call, and everything would end up being fine. You put 3 points in Star Call, and rather than going Fiendish Codex first, you go Chalice first, so that you're able to keep up with it, and everything in that regard I think is still going to end up being completely fine. You are missing 40 damage, and you're missing a little bit of ability power, but if you end up going Chalice and you just spam, you try to get out of the laning phase and transition into the mid game, Soraka is going to be more obnoxious now in the mid game than she was before, which is really insane. Obviously, this incentivizes her to purchase boots sooner, whereas before she could potentially rely on going magical boots in some matchups and then just running around with the enhanced magical boots, movement speed, and just staying on boots tier 1 and relying on her passive. But obviously, this incentivizes her to do that. But this isn't really a Soraka nerf. It's a nerf in the way that we currently perceive Soraka. As a top lane bully, she can actually win some matchups. She can beat players and things of that nature. But you also have to remember that Soraka's still very new, and a lot of people are getting very adjusted to playing her. And they're also getting adjusted to playing with her. And when that tends to be the case, it's not going to perform at the highest levels as good as it possibly could over a longer period of time. And so I think in that regard, Soraka's better now, or she will become better. I really hope people don't panic and think that she can never be picked top, because I think that she's still going to be able to be picked top. And I really hope that people acknowledge this for what it is, and that in bot lane, when opponents blind certain support picks, you can weave in Soraka, and she's going to be really gross for the healing. And so in that regard, I think everything's good. This is actually really good by Riot. This is a really, really, really good change. Keep Soraka's identity without really removing her from ever being seen again in competitive. And also, I would personally recommend getting the newest skins that just came out on Soraka, and also the Star Guardian Soraka looks absolutely lovely as well. So make sure to get that picked up. Some people comment on the self-heal reduced, but that doesn't matter really at all. Oh, I'm sorry. This isn't even a nerf to the damage. This is just a nerf to the self-heal. I am having reading trouble. This means that in the matchups where she couldn't lose anyway, she's still the same old Soraka. In the matchups where she couldn't lose anyway, she's still the same old. She's actually better than the old Soraka. In the matchups that were somewhat skill, where the opponents could get on her and kill her, yeah, she's a little bit more fringe. So now she'll only be picked in the matchups where Soraka really does destroy them. And if tanks end up coming back into the meta, in top lane. Like right now we have a few tanks in top. Then Soraka will be really good then, and support Soraka's buffed. So this is actually so nice. This is so nice. These are actually really nice Soraka changes. Sylas, Q damage increased later. Sylas has been doing well, but our large changes in 10.1, we're less worried about him taking over pro game, so we're give him some more power. Q chain last, 40 to 100 to 40 to 120. That's cool. I don't like Sylas. I don't like Sylas. I don't think he really has a place inside of competitive in his current state. And that if they do keep pushing him this way, though, he will end up becoming competitively viable. I know that a lot of people do like him, and they're trying to figure out ways to make him work, whether by using Conqueror Sylas or other variations of Sylas with, like, Grasp of the Undying or, like, other stuff, and trying to see if he can go into jungle, trying to see if he can go into mid, trying to see if he can go into top lane. Sylas just, even when he was meta last year, I never really liked him, and it always looked like he was so volatile inside of team compositions. It's very awkward to weave him in, and when he's blind pickable because his stats are so overtuned, then he ends up being problematic for the game due to his ability to flex and also ability to just outright win some matchups where he's not even supposed to. So, I don't know. Udyr, time between stances decreased per Cloud Drake buff. Udyr doesn't benefit at all from Cloud Drake, so we're fixing that. Nice. Passive Monkey's Agility. Udyr now gets 5% off his global cooldowns the time when he can switch stances per Cloud Drake buff. Wow, that's great. Jungle champions. One trend we've seen over the years is that new and lower MMR players pick jungle at a much lower rate than other positions, even when it's stronger than those other positions. For 10.4, we're approaching this problem by giving some popular champs at these skill levels better tools to jungle with, especially also because jungle has an arguably smaller champion pool than other positions. While players here will still have to contend with the learning curve of the jungle as a position, they won't have to learn to play a new champion as well. All the changes below are to ability... Wait, what? All the changes below are to ability... What? Do I not speak English? All the changes below are to ability effectiveness. Oh, okay. Well, that's just weird. All the changes below are to ability effectiveness against monsters to avoid accidental impacts to lane strength. As a caveat, we're investigating other solutions to help out jungle and satisfaction of playing the role in the future. So look, okay. Darius, passive hemorrhage damage. Now deals 120% damage to all monsters. Q decimate. Now heals from large monsters. So this is actually really big for Darius. This helps out his clear, and then obviously his sustain becomes a lot better. And Darius is a champion that, as long as he ends up getting stacks inside of a team fight, he ends up being viable. If the Cinderhulk buff does end up going through, and Darius ends up building Cinderhulk and then going into Trinity Force or Black Cleaver or something of that nature, and then continuing on into pure tank, he's a champion that would scale better than some of the current AD junglers inside. So this is absolutely, this is insane, especially because his mid-game sustain is going to be really, really big. Now heals from large monsters. I don't know if this includes epic monsters, but if it does, this is really big as well for taking dragons, heralds, and barons. Diana, passive Moonsilver Blade, increased by 150% on non-epic monsters. So this is really big for Diana jungle. Judgment now deals 150% damage to non-epic monsters. This is fantastic for Garen jungle. He'll probably actually be more viable in the jungle than he is in top lane at higher MMRs. W, hyper base bonus damage to monsters, 100 to 300 to 300 all levels. So personally, I don't really like Gnar inside of the jungle. So I don't think that the Gnar one is as big. Passive Darkness Rise, maximum damage to monsters, 15 to 100 to 25 to 120. So I'm going to have to look back at Mordekaiser's patch changes, because I remember that when Mordekaiser first actually came out inside of the jungle, it still felt like he was just missing a little bit too much, or he was missing a little bit in order to be viable in the jungle. The other thing about Mordekaiser is that he wants to be ahead in base levels, and he also needs items in order to make his Death Realm and just oppressiveness in the game more effective. And in the current state of jungle, it's pretty hard to come by those things. And so I don't know if this passive change is actually large enough, but maybe it is. I'm gonna have to look back at his past patch history. Passive Blade's End monster damage abilities now wound all monsters for 120. Talon, if Talon could end up becoming a jungler, this is actually probably one of the most unhealthy things inside of the jungle. It's because I think that this champion is way too unhealthy. if he ends up being a jungler. There is no jungler that can complain or complain. Well, I mean, a lot of junglers are going to complain if this ends up being the thing. But Talon is... No one has as much terrain scaling except for Kayn. And even and Kayn is so slow that it doesn't even matter. Kayn doesn't approach you the way Talon does. And so if Talon ends up actually becoming a jungler, I would imagine that his clear and just oppressiveness inside of ganks, especially once he gets 6, could even be more problematic than Qiyana, which would mean that this would be the first real assassin in the jungle that we've had since when Kha'Zix was actually really good. So this is... I don't even know what to think of this. Zed, Contempt for the Weak, increased by 100% against monsters. Passive, Contempt for the Weak, maximum damage to monsters. So the thing is, this is his auto attack, right? Whenever he hits targets that are relatively low. Now, again, similar thing to like Elise. This makes me think of like a 80 version of Elise, where obviously you don't want to spend all your time doing golems. You don't want to spend all your time doing raptors until you end up getting jungle items, and you can just clear them really fast anyway. Why would you pick Zed if Talon and Qiyana both exist? Because Zed also wants items so that he's able to reliably one-shot the opponent, and because he doesn't have as much slipperiness as, say, a Talon, or he doesn't have as much CC and obnoxiousness as a Qiyana, and because Zed is so much more honest and upfront about what he's trying to do than, say, a Talon and a Qiyana, it makes it that much harder for him to do it. And also, if Cinderhulk changes end up getting pushed through and more tanks end up coming into the game, Zed is impacted by that a lot more than Talon and Qiyana both are. And so it just sounds really strange, especially if Zed would end up needing like a Tiamat in order to remain relevant. But I know that these changes are mostly aimed at lower MMR, but I think that the Talon, Mordekaiser, Garen, and Darius one are the most exciting, and then obviously Diana. So in case you missed it, 10.3 follow-up changes. Akali, Akali's kneecaps got crushed. Lucian, passive light slinger damage modifier fixed to bug where Lucian's critical modifier against non-minions was 1 instead of 0.75. Yumi, prowling projectile base damage 40 to 165 to 40 to 190. Q, prowling projectile and power damage 45 to 220 to 45 to 245. E, Zumi's base heal 70 to 100 to 70 to 220. Yumi is one of the best supports in the game again, and so that's really nice. Runes and Exhaust. Small buffs to Exhaust as well as readability improvements. Duration 2.5 to 3 seconds. This is really big. Now shows how much damage is being reduced. That is really cool as well. I think that Exhaust could deal with also just a stat buff to it, not just the duration buff, but obviously the duration buff is sort of a stat buff because you end up decreasing them for longer. I don't think that this will actually make it outshine Ignite unless there's assassins or like pseudo-assassins on the enemy team, in which case Exhaust does become really prevalent. This is really good on spellbook users, though. This is a very big book for anyone that uses spellbook and eventually gets Exhaust. And so for like Ivern or Ornn or certain support champions that get spellbook, this is a really nice change. Hail of Blades, maximum time between attacks 2 to 3 seconds. Cooldown 4 seconds out of combat to 8 seconds out of combat. Isn't that a nerf? Cool. Okay. In combat. Okay. Oh, 4 seconds out of combat, 8 seconds in oh, that's actually really big. You can just keep saying in combat and then get Hail Blades. Oh, that's really big on certain champions. Okay. Legend Rune. We've seen Bloodline 2 often as the dominant picks for ADC, especially in pro play all last year. We're slowing down all the Legends runes stacking from minion farming versus champion killing, since Bloodline specifically relies on stacking up. And since pros get more of their stacks from farming than kills compared to everyone else, this should be most impactful at that level of play. This is really good. Perfect timing. Currently, a lot of players are taking perfect time. This is completely fine. So stopwatch cost is up by 50, which that doesn't really matter that much. Typically, when you're buying stopwatch, you're getting it for a specific reason. And obviously, if you're taking the rune, you get technically more gold value out of it now. No longer additionally reduces the cooldown of Guardian's Adel, Gargoyle, Stoneplate, and Zonya's Hourglass by 15%. I didn't even know that was a... I didn't even know that's a thing. I did not, I didn't even know that was something that was going on there. Anyways, Grants a commencing stopwatch that becomes a replica stopwatch at 10 minutes. Grants a commencing stopwatch that becomes a replica stopwatch at 14 minutes. Takedowns reduce this timer by 2 minutes. This is very obnoxious for users that take stopwatch in the jungle because they don't want to take magical boots. So for champions like Gragas, this is really, really big. Or basically any jungler that gets stopwatch with the intention to dive with it because they don't want to take the magical boots and lock up the ability to go Predator or get mobility boots. And so for those champions, this is insane. Also, for certain assassins in mid lane, this is also insane. I can also imagine this is very good for Gangplank up in top lane in matchups where he wants to take the perfect timing rune in order to survive maybe certain dive timings and things, and then obviously get assists via his ultimate and then end up reducing it pretty consistently. So I think in solo queue, this is gonna be very problematic and competitive. It's gonna be less problematic, but there's gonna be certain champions that just benefit from this way too much. Phase Rush, attempting to broaden the rune since it's currently the only one being taken by ranged mages with extremely low cooldowns. 3 seconds to 4 seconds time between attacks. 3 seconds, 4 seconds, okay. Movement speed 25% to 25 to 40%, increase to 30 to 50% for melee champions. So Phase Rush is pretty interesting. When you combine Phase Rush with Nimbus Cloak, you end up getting a pretty steroided Storm Raiders Surge from old. And I also think that Nimbus Cloak in the jungle is being really overlooked, and that certain junglers also do have the option to take Phase Rush. And so when you combine both, I think that it could end up creating more competitively viable junglers. And so you'd potentially just be on the lookout for that. Prototype Omnistone. These keystones are really hard to trigger at level 1. Will no longer give the player press the attack or conqueror as their first rune. That is a nice little buff to Omnistone. I think that the rune Fleet Footwork feels a little... Well, Fleet Footwork isn't terrible. Glacial. Glacial's really terrible on Omnistone. I think that they should remove Glacial from Omnistone. They should just remove Glacial from Omnistone. It feels so bad. Feels so terrible. So, Phase Rush. Did Xin Zhao in the jungle with Nimbus Cloak. Xin Zhao in the jungle with Nimbus Cloak, and maybe being able to actually just go tank with the new Cinderhulk buff. So you just be a super tank that has insane amounts of speed and utility. That would potentially be really good. Darius, I would imagine, would take Predator inside of the jungle, or he would just accept taking Conqueror. So I don't think he would take Phase Rush, but maybe there's a chance he would end up taking Phase Rush. So I'm not totally sure on that. But obviously those are all cool. Unflinching now probably grants 10% slow resistances per summoner spell on cooldown. That's really cool. Immolate items. Getting some more satisfaction and activity out of the Sunfire's pattern. Balmy Cinder. Once every 10 seconds, your next immobilizing ability deals 6 to 23 plus 0.2 bonus health and releases a Fire Nova that also deals that bonus damage around you. Cinderhulk. Once every 10 seconds, your next immobilizing ability deals 12 to 29 plus 0.04 bonus health to all enemies if it hits, and releases a Fire Nova that deals that damage and bonus damage around you. Sunfire Cape. Once every 10 seconds, your next immobilize... Okay. 26 to 43 plus 0.05 bonus health to all enemies. This is a huge buff to tanks. Ornn is going to be broken. This is Ornn's kingdom now. This patch is literally the ornament. That is exactly what's going on. In addition to this, another champion that I think people are forgetting is Maokai. Maokai inside of the jungle as well as top lane is huge for this. Jungle Cho'Gath is also already sort of viable. And so jungle tank Cho'Gath, this probably helps out as well. This is another big buff to Sejuani. This is another massive buff to Shen. This is a very big buff to Zac that actually gives him a little bit of damage. And then, if this is actually just so insane. This is so insane. This is such a gross item. This is so gross. I don't even know what to think about this. I actually have no idea what to think about this. I wonder if this kind of a change actually makes Leona jungle viable or something like that. Probably not, but I'm always trying to go a little bit out there with ideas when I think about stuff, because that would be pretty hilarious. But the tanks are coming. The tanks are coming. Twitch chat, YouTube, if you're watching this, the tanks they're on their way. And I love it. I love tanks. I love Soraka. I love them when they're together. Tanks with Sunfire Cape and Spirit Visage, Getting healed by Yuumi and Soraka? Oh, hello. Hello. Oh, man. Slow resistant calculation adjustment. Okay, login region selector. The selector, when you log in, you'll automatically be directed to the server associated to your account. Okay, crash reporting, bug fixes, Pike. Okay, upcoming skin choices. So let me just take a look at these skins. I know that this is what a lot of you guys are here for. So it just feels like we have these skins. I feel like I'm looking at, okay, you could tell me this was Morgana and I would believe you. You could tell me this is Morgana and I would absolutely believe you. I can't tell this is Diana from the splash. You could tell me this is Katarina and I would believe you. I don't really feel that good seeing this. You could tell me this is almost Kale and I might even, well, she doesn't have wings. Wait, is it Katarina? Wait, it's Katarina? Yes. I thought it was I thought it was Diana. No big deal. All right, let's take a look at Blood Moon Tryndamere. Is there any hidden? Doesn't look like it. Does not look like there's anything hidden. Now, come on. Are you serious right now? You're telling me this isn't Yasuo? Tell me this isn't Yasuo, just a little bit of a new hairdo. Like, come on. Hello? What is this? It's actually Yasuo. Not only did he go and mess with Akuma or something in Street Fighter, and he took his beads or something. He also apparently met with Riven or Senna or something and took her sword. And obviously is a little bit more buff. He's been working out. I have no idea. I have no idea what's going on here. This is just Yasuo. I can't tell this is Tryndamere. I mean, the skins look really cool, but what is this? It looks like Wukong. What? You know what? This looks like, you know what this looks like? It looks like, wait. Hold on. Yeah? Any truers? What? Hello? Is there any truers in chat? Oh, come on. What is this? What? Come on, man. What? You guys ever see this? The Village? Oh, man. Whatever. This is Sylvanas. Or something. I don't even know. I don't even know. Make sure to get all these skins when you do log in. If you are a collector, you're going to want to make sure to complete your Blood Moon collection. And you don't want to miss out. So make sure to get that. Okay. And let's do just a quick recap really quick. So the jungle changes, I think, are most important for Darius, Diana, Garen, potentially Mordekaiser, and Talon. Not so much for Zed and Gnar. And then, obviously, the changes, Akali had her kneecaps broken in. Lucian is... I don't understand why he gets banned as much as he does in competitive. And bug fix doesn't really matter. I mean, bug fix is noticeable, but probably doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things why you're picking Lucian. Yuumi is one of the best supports in the game. The exhaust change is really, really big for spellbook users, but obviously supports who end up taking exhaust. Halo Blade change is good. Legends Rune is really good. Perfect timing, really, really powerful on the junglers that end up taking it or the top laners. And then obviously a massive buff for solo queue in general. Phase Rush, I think we're going to see more of this combined with Nimbus Cloak because they're in the same tree. And I think that that can't be overlooked. I don't think that you can overlook that both Phase Rush and Nimbus Cloak are in the same tree. That is going to be really scary on certain champions. Prototype Omnistone, I wish that they would just remove Glacial. The tanks are coming. The tanks they're on the way. Singed makes no sense. I really want to see the stats behind it. beautiful nerfs, or beautiful changes, I want to say, actually, on Sona and Soraka. So I actually want to give Riot a lot of credit on this. They managed to buff support Sona, and they also managed to buff support Soraka while allowing top Soraka to still remain viable in spots where you would end up wanting her to go top. So I think that is so insane. But they did gut top Sona, which I'm totally fine with, because I think that top Sona was a lot more unhealthy than top Soraka. Rammus doesn't really matter. Okay. Lux, really, really big for support Lux. Anything for mages are fine. Jace, I don't think that the meta is really fitting for him right now. And so even though these are nice buffs, I think that too much has sort of changed since Jace's reign to dominance, but I don't doubt that certain top laners in the LEC will end up picking him potentially, as well as certain Koreans and Chinese players in the LPL. Gnar change, I'm not a very big fan of Gnar. I think that I acknowledge that it is impactful, and that depending on what tanks are up there in top lane, Gnar could end up becoming viable, as he fulfills both roles of a split pusher and then ends up being a tank depending on what the enemy team composition is. Garen changes I think are best for jungle. Caitlyn change is awesome. Aurelion Sol I actually think is in a fine spot if you're really good at it, so a little bit sad to see him nerfed there. Aphelios is completely fine. Amumu change is really good as well, especially when you factor in the Immolate change. So 10.4 is a really good patch. It's a really, really good patch. So some people are saying that Akali's hotfix is a buff, and I'm aware of that. It does not change where she is. Does not change where she is. Anyways. Okay, so that's pretty much it. I hope you guys enjoyed the rundown.